So, like Corey said, we're going to talk about fire extinguishers today. Now, most important piece to this is follow whatever your policy is, because fire extinguishers are somewhat tricky as far as when we ask employees to use them, when we don't. So, look at your emergency evacuation policy, see what that says. If it says to get out of the building, then obviously get out of the building. Um, so this is going to be kind of a courtesy, just how to utilize a fire extinguisher, and then we'll go from there. So bring the slide up. All right, so fire extinguishers again, are certainly important, especially for small fires, and mitigating that so that it doesn't spread to be bigger issues for property loss and or injuries of employees. Um, So we're going to go through, we're going to talk about when and how to use a fire extinguisher, how to select the correct fire extinguisher. We'll talk about the fire extinguisher types, and then we'll go through and talk about how to utilize a fire extinguisher as well the proper way. All right, so the objectives again, understand the basics of fire. Know when to get out of a situation if there is a fire, whether to get evacuate the facility or try to mitigate these small fires. The operation of fire extinguishers using the pass method, we'll talk about that. Perform basic inspections and maintenance checks. So we'll talk about that. And not only what a lot of you may currently be doing, but also what OSHA says as far as inspections. Recognize the different types and classes of fire, and then match each fire type with the correct extinguisher to be utilized. All right, so when to step in and when to step away. So again, refer to whatever your policy is. A lot of employers choose to, if the fire alarm goes off, you evacuate, no questions asked. Again, with utilization of fire extinguishers and asking employees to do certain things, starts to go into a different direction and different training and things of that nature. So again, we're going to go through, explain to you, fire extinguisher types, fire types, and then also how to utilize a fire extinguisher. So how fires start. So pretty basic. You need to have oxygen, you need to have fuel, you need to have heat or a chemical reaction. All three of those components are prevalent, then you've got some sort of fire. As we go through and we talk about fire extinguishers, if we're able to eliminate or reduce one of those, whether it be the heat or possibly the oxygen with smothering the fire, then we've taken that chain away so that we don't have an active fire anymore. Okay, so fight or flee. Again, before grabbing a fire extinguisher, pause and ask yourself a few questions in that circumstance or in that situation. One, ask yourself, is somebody notified or, pulled the fire alarm? So if you've got an active fire alarm in your location and or whatever your notification is of fire, could just be simple as a bullhorn or maybe a different electronic methods, but has somebody activated that so that not only you are aware of it, but also others? Have we notified the fire department or we called 911 to get the first responders on their way to assist with that? Again, always have them on the way when there's a fire alarm. We can always tell them that we don't need them once they're there. But again, we don't want to slow down that process. All right, is this fire small enough to contain and not spreading? So again, you got an example here of a trash can of a small fire. Again, this might be something that somebody chooses to utilize a fire extinguisher to keep it from spreading throughout the facility, causing property damage and or injuries to employees. So, looking at that as well. One of the things I will say with fire extinguishers is that if you do utilize a fire extinguisher and you exhaust that fire extinguisher, never go try to get another fire extinguisher, continue to fight that. At that point, it's best to get away from that area, let the professionals come in and take care of it. Um, is the nearest exit clear so that you can easily evacuate if the fire suddenly grows? So again, knowing where your emergency exits are and making sure that you got a good path to get away so that you're not trapped if that fire were to get any larger. Um, again, is the smoke light enough that avoiding while fighting the fire? So again, we got a lot of smoke. We got a lot of different chemicals, things of that nature in the air. We certainly don't want to stay in that environment and try to fight it. So again, that's where additional training, additional personal protective equipment is going to come into play, so that we don't have the adverse effects of those. So again, just in those circumstances, light smoke, so we don't want to have to try to negotiate in a heavy smoke environment. All right. Do you have the correct extinguisher for the class of fire that you're dealing with? So as we'll talk about, it may just be a fire that's ordinary wood, paper, things of that nature, or it could be a chemical fire, or could be metal fire. Whatever that circumstance is, do we have the right extinguisher? Because if we utilize the incorrect extinguisher, especially maybe some of you still have the water cans, and we try to put it onto a metal fire, now we've just created a bigger issue for the fact that now there's going to be a reaction as opposed to dampening that fire. Have you been trained to use the fire extinguisher correctly? So again, is this is going to be an overview training, but I would encourage if your employer or your organization chooses, that you can use a fire extinguisher within their facilities, then I would also have a hands-on piece. Maybe your local fire department come out and actually so that you kind of know exactly what to expect or, the weight and all that kind of stuff. And you can actually physically hands-on do some of that as well. All right. If you cannot answer definitely or confidently answer yes to these questions, then again, or if you do answer yes to this, maybe you're able to proceed with that utilization of a fire extinguisher. Again, follow whatever your policies and procedures are for your organization in this aspect of evacuation of fires. All right, the use of fire extinguishers. So we're going to go through, we're going to talk about the pass method. A lot of us has probably heard this. So pass, pull, aim, squeeze, swipe. So as we go through that, again, just kind of a step by step on what to do with those fire extinguishers in those circumstances. And again, just like a lot of things that we have on the Ask the Expert, this is not just a training for work. Obviously, this is something for home as well. If you do have fire extinguishers at home, so utilize it in your everyday life as well. So with the pass method, we're going to pull the pin at the top of the fire extinguisher. They all should be secured typically with some sort of seal or some sort of plastic wrap. You're going to pull that. It's going to break away pretty easily. And then it's going to allow you to depress the switch on that to activate the fire retardant that's going to be exhausted from that. Aim and squeeze toward the base of the fire. Squeeze the lever to discharge the fire extinguisher. So again, we're going to pull that. It's going to react and it's going to come out through the nozzle so that you're able to put that onto the fire itself. and then sweep. So then you're going to sweep back and forth towards the base of the fire. So we don't want to be, up towards the top. We're trying to reduce that heat and also suffocate that fire as much as we can. If it's a chemical um, retardant, then again, that's the best method as far as trying to get those put out. We start to do it any higher, things of that nature is a good possibility. We may spread that fire or push it with the pressure from the fire extinguisher. All right. So it's always good to make sure that, maybe you've got some of these little posters up around just as a reminder to folks. Again, this is one of those things that hopefully nobody ever has to experience. But when we do experience, be able to have that reference to be able to take care of that in those times of need. All right, know where it is, know what and how it works. So again, understanding, making sure you know where your fire extinguishers are out throughout your facilities. Um, so as we go through, it'll talk about, distances the fire extinguishers need to be for different types of combustibles and things of that nature. But code for all buildings and also under OSHA and NFPA talks about within 50 to 75 foot throughout your facilities, you need to have fire extinguishers. So basically, any place that you look, you should be somewhat able to see a fire extinguisher and utilize it if we need to. A lot of times, fire exits are going to have them posted there, but just be familiar with that, whatever that looks like in your facility. And again, make sure that they're clearly marked. Um, so we got a fire extinguisher, just like our fire doors. You don't want to stack things in front of it. So we're having to try to negotiate to try to get that fire extinguisher in a case of emergency. All right, inspect extinguishers monthly. So a lot of times when we come out and do walkthroughs, things of that nature, we're great about, we've got a company that comes in and looks at them once a year, and then they'll come back depending upon the style and the manufacturer of the extinguisher. They may get a static test between 5 and 10 years to make sure that they're still good to continue to be refilled. So the monthly piece in OSHA, it spells out saying that the employer shall inspect these on a monthly basis. And basically, they all got the hanging tags on them for that inspection. And the only thing that we're looking for is just to make sure it's in the green zone. Okay. We want to make sure that in the time of need, if we need to go utilize that fire extinguisher, that we're not grabbing a fire extinguisher that's damaged or that doesn't work properly, which is not going to help anybody in those circumstances. Also, make sure that the pin and the seals are intact so that nobody's broke that and possibly discharged some of that. And then again, there's no visible damage. Whatever your policy is on the physical damage, if something were to happen to a fire extinguishers, have a process to where you can exchange that out, so that we're not impacting the operation of that with some sort of damage. All right, care and maintenance. So again, fire extinguishers are several of these throughout our facilities, obviously. So just making sure that they're clean. Okay. So the clean part of these, we'll kind of go through all of these different types of things, but with cleaning, making sure that we don't have uh, combustible or flammable material, oils, things like that, that's on these. And then we try to take it to a fire to fight it. Then obviously we've created another issue for the employee. So going to go through it again, making sure that they're clean, kept up to, making sure that they're obviously able to be seen in their red and color, that, what, we don't got a bunch of dust and dirt and things of that nature that now we can't see that it's a red container hanging on the wall. So just some sort of cleaning process for that. Replace. So again, we just talked about anytime that there is damage or if the extinguisher is exhausted as far as no pressure, it's not in that green zone, then we need to have a process to where we take that out of service and replace it with something else. A lot of times with your companies that you deal with that'll do your yearly and your 5-year inspections, they'll leave you a few extras just in those circumstances so that you can switch it out. And then the next time they come, they can deal with replacing that or whatever they need to do. Recharge, again, this is what we're looking for on our monthly inspection. So you can see the diagram here or the picture, and you'll see the green zone. That's exactly what we're looking for, is just to make sure it's within that green zone so that we know it's ready to go. If it's in the overcharged, again, it might be something that we notify our company that deals with those so that they're able to do that and switch those out if we do see it in those conditions. But also, if it needs to be recharged, maybe somebody utilized it and left it there, and now we don't have enough pressure, whatever the case is, for the next emergency. Just switch that out so that again, we're not creating an issue when it's in a need. Testing. So again, testing is going to fall back on your company or ever how the process is with that. So it needs to undergo a hydrostatic test or pressure testing every 5 to 10 years or 5 to 12 years, depending upon the manufacturer, the type, things of that nature, just to make sure that it's able to hold the pressure and function like it needs to be. They'll also come through on a yearly basis, do an inspection on them as well, and then issue a new tag for that particular year. Remove. So again, if there's issues with the extinguisher, maybe it's out of compliance, maybe it's older than that 5 to 12 years. So we take it out of service at that point, replace it with something else. Or again, maybe it's damaged or discharged or whatever. We're going to take it out of service, replace it with something else. Checklist. Have a helpful checklist that you can print out or download. Again, on BLR, they've got a lot of this kind of stuff so that you're able to do that, and just kind of a reminder as to, how a fire extinguisher works, fire extinguisher maintenance, things of that nature, just so, again, if we need these, that they are in service and ready to go. This not only applies to the fire extinguishers within our facilities, but also the fire extinguishers. A lot of us fall under DOT with our commercial vehicles that we have to operate. So those got to be inside those vehicles as well per DOT regulations. So again, some sort of check process, cleaning, making sure that they're ready to go if we're out on the road and we're to have a fire, that fire extinguisher's ready to go and in service. All right. Know the fire, know the extinguisher. So we'll talk about different types of fires. We'll talk about different classes of fire extinguisher as well. So classes of fire. So you've got Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D, and Class K. So we'll go through each of those and explain to everybody the proper use and the proper way to fight those particular fires. So classes of fire, again, Class A fires involve ordinary combustibles, woods, plastics, lumber, paper, cardboard, cloth, plastic, foam, garbage. So a lot of things that, again, just ordinary throwaway things. We can utilize a Class A in those to fight those types of fires. Class B fire involves flammable liquids, so gasoline, kerosene, other flammable liquids, oil or other combustible liquids, common solvents, kitchen grease. So Class B fires are those types of things, so that we're wanting to make sure that we're matching up the proper fire extinguisher for those as well. And we talked before, some locations may still have the water cans. Again, that's something that we probably wouldn't want to try to utilize in these circumstances, because it's probably just going to spread that petroleum base, so that we're going to transfer from one location to another. Class C fires. Class C fires involve energized electrical equipment. So circuit breakers, power tools, extension cords, appliances, panel boxes, things of that nature, anything electronic. That's what this particular chemical is designed just for those circumstances. You very well may have a system, especially in your IT areas and your maintenance closets, things like that, that already would be an automatic system that would discharge in those circumstances. But again, in these types of fires, Class C fire extinguisher is what we're going to utilize. Class D involves combustible metals, so magnesium fires, chips and grinding of dust, titanium, potassium, sodium. So a lot of different types of metal um, may again react to water, things of that nature might make it worse. So making sure that we got that right type of extinguisher for that. So the first three, the ABC, a lot of times that's what probably most of your extinguishers are going to be ABC. But if you've got an operation that you're utilizing some of these special metals, making sure that we've got that Class D just for those types of things and in the area in case we need them. Class K is for kitchen fires. So again, cooking oils, fats, things of that nature. In a lot of our kitchenettes, things like that, we may have even microwaves or cooking, stoves, things like that. So just making sure that we've got something in that area, just in case we were to get one of those types of fires, and we're not doing the old style of trying to find the flour and throw it on there. So we've got the right proper extinguisher, and we're able to extinguish these pretty real quickly. A lot of times, fire code, depending upon your locations, may require, if you got a kitchenette, may require you to have these automatic Class Ks that once they get so hot that they will burst and extinguish that particular flame. Um, and then again, I talk about the water cans. So, air pressurized water extinguishers. So basically, we fill it with water, then we put pressure to it. And again, these are going to be only utilized in Class A fires only. So ordinary combustibles, we're not going to utilize them for electrical, flammable liquids, flammable metals, things of that nature. So just for ordinary types of combustibles, the only thing we're going to utilize these for. All right, so fire extinguisher types. So dry chemical extinguishers, extinguishing agent is CO2, used for Class B and C fires only. Class A fires and don't use them in Class A fires and or confined space. Um, so again, making sure that, not only that we're looking at our facilities and things of that nature, but maybe we're doing an operation and maybe we're doing some hot work in a confined space area, making sure that we've got that right particular fire extinguisher for that. Carbon dioxide, you uh, extinguish or you discharge it in a confined area, it's going to take the oxygen away, but that's also going to create issues for you as well in that confined space. All right, multi-purpose extinguishers. Okay, the extinguishing agent, fire retardant powder. So ABC fires. That's what a lot of you are probably going to have throughout your facilities. It's the most common. So these are the types of fires that it will fight. So just check to make sure what you got there. And again, if you need specialized things for different types of areas, then those extinguishers are readily available. Fire extinguisher types again, Class K extinguishers, um, potassium carbonate, biocarbonate, and potassium. So basically, these are utilized to go into oils, fats, things of that nature, and suffocate those so that it puts that fire out as well. So if you have your operations where you got a kitchen area, kitchenette areas, things like that. Have a Class K extinguishers always the best. All right, extinguisher locations. So again, making sure that we've got the right extinguisher in the right locations. So throughout your facilities, probably the ABC is what's going to be utilized, and maybe depending upon your local codes, it might be right next to the fire hose box, or it might be right next to your emergency station, something like that. So again, looking to make sure that we don't have an ABC extinguisher in our kitchenette area. Okay, or we don't have it in our hot work area to where we're dealing with specialized metals, things like that. So again, making sure that we know where they're at, the location, and it is the right extinguisher for that particular location. All right, extinguisher locations again. Class A fire extinguishers must be placed within 75 foot of the area containing ordinary combustible materials. So again, whatever you've got, cardboard, things of that nature, within 75 feet, you need to have the Class A or Class ABC in that area to be able to try to extinguish those types of fires. Um, Class B extinguishers must be within 50 foot of flammable liquid storage areas. So a lot of us may have the flammable cabinets, or we may store our flammable liquids in a certain location. So making sure that we've got a Class B extinguisher, and again, or the ABC in that area, so that if that were to have a chemical reaction fire, or just an ordinary fire that would consume to these chemicals, that we've got the right protection for that. Class C fire extinguishers, again, 75 foot of any potential electrical hazard. So your electrical rooms, your IT rooms, things of that nature. I would always say if you don't already have a system in place for those, then, put an extinguisher inside of there. That way, if there is issues, it's relatively available, and we're able to mitigate that in those circumstances. Class D fires must be within 75 feet of the area of combustible metals. So again, if you've got a hot work area, things of that nature, make sure that we got a Class D fire extinguisher in those areas to be able to be utilized. Or, a lot of times with hot work, maybe we've got a designated area that we do hot work, but we may have to go out to a different location to do some sort of hot work. So make sure we got a Class D extinguisher if we're dealing with some of those specialized types of metals that could be an issue for other types of fire extinguishers. Class K fires, again, for Class K fire extinguisher, must be within 30 foot of the cooking equipment where oils and fats are listed. So a lot of times you'll see if a lot of with our jails, things of that nature, our schools, you may have a cafeteria area, and those Class Ks are actually typically up in the hood system, so that if something were to happen, it would activate and put that fire out. But if you don't have that, then at least we've got a Class K fire extinguisher for those areas, so that we're able to grab that and try to, again, mitigate that so that it doesn't spread throughout the facility. All right, so key points to remember with fire extinguishers again, fires start with heat, oxygen, fuel, and other ignition sources, chemicals, things of that nature. So understand the basics there. A lot of times we can prevent a lot of these. So, some of the things that we see when we do walkthroughs, having open or having candles with open burning, obviously creates an additional issue. Having the personal heaters underneath our desks, things of that nature, which again refer back to your organization as far as their policy. But in those circumstances, making sure that we don't have things around that um, heater so that we're creating a fire hazard there. Only small fires, contained fires. So again, refer back to whatever your policy is. But if your policy is, it's okay to try to utilize a fire extinguisher for a small fire. Again, making sure that in those circumstances that it is small, if we extinguish the first fire extinguisher, that we're not going looking for another one, we're just getting out of the facility. Okay. But also recognizing in those circumstances, is this fire too big for me to deal with? Should I just get out of the building? Because again, a lot of times it may be something that starts off questionable whether we need to fight it, but next thing we know, it's filled with smoke, it's spread, and now we have troubles negotiating getting out of the facility. Use the pass technique to operate the extinguisher. So again, pull the pin, aim, um, squeeze the trigger, and then sweep the base of the fire. In those circumstances, the proper way to do that. And then choose the right extinguisher for the right job. So again, making sure that if we've got specialized things, whether it be kitchen areas, it be specialized metals, electronics, things of that nature, chemical fires. With chemicals, a lot of times, we talk about the SDS. The SDS is a wealth of information there. So if you've got chemicals and things of that nature, just read through it and make sure that there's no specialized firefighting instructions or specialized things that we need to have for those particular types of fires. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns? Give you a little bit of time back today. Again, refer back to your whatever your policy is within your facilities, within your organization, as to, some organizations. And again, in my past, our stance was the fire alarm goes off, you exit the building, no questions. You don't try to grab a fire extinguisher. Your only job is to get out. Because again, when we start to process that to where we start to ask them employees to do certain additional things, then there could be additional trainings and additional equipment that need to be utilized. And again, a lot of us are relatively close to fire departments that are going to get there pretty quickly, and those folks are trained for those situations. All right, if there's no comments or concerns, questions, then thanks everybody for attending, and we will see you next month on Ask the Expert.